we are client-centered. When we get volunteers, especially new volunteers, we make sure that that expectation is really hammered home up front. If you're here to volunteer just because you would like to make yourself feel warm and fuzzy, and making yourself feel warm and fuzzy is sitting in my office talking to me, that's not client-centered. So we make sure that those expectations are very clear as the volunteer comes on board. I've had to have very weird, awkward conversations with people? Yes. Have they been very angry with us? Yes. About 10 years ago, we dropped 9 programs from CCJ. Those programs included a kids program, a food program, a school supply program, and there were a lot of people who were very angry with us, and they said, now I don't have any place to volunteer. Well, we dropped those programs so that we could focus on housing, which is actually the cure to homelessness. So it is uncomfortable, it's not always the most pleasant conversation, but something to also remember, and when I'm talking with volunteers and even staff, is this isn't a great fit, and that's okay. Because what's not a great fit for us may be a great fit someplace else. Exactly, it may be a great fit for people who care, or a great fit for PASS, or Launchpad. I actually don't think that anyone who just wants to sit in the executive director's office and talk is a great fit for anywhere, so if anyone's thinking of volunteering and doing that, don't. However, I feel that in the long run, it's better for both the organization and for the person. Are there people walking around the community that see me and are going, oh, I really hate that she dropped out that food program? Sure, they still won't speak to me, and that's fine too. But really, as leaders, we need to look at what's best for A, the people that we serve, and B, the organization as a whole. And sometimes those conversations just have to happen. I also have a great staff team that will sometimes help me do that too. So shout out to the staff team.
Thank you. Sedona, with so many social issues in our society, how do you decide what to focus on as your primary objective?
So there are a ton of issues going on in all levels of everything. At the Launchpad Teen Center, I was a member of the Teen Advisory Council. And the Teen Advisory Council is essentially a space guided by a Launchpad staff member where teens can share concerns about the community and get involved in the community and have a voice in the issues in the Launchpad as well as out in the broader Prescott area. And the way that on TAC is the Teen Advisory Council. We would choose our primary objectives is through campaigns. And these campaigns were rooted in our individual passions as students, what we were passionate about, and what we saw as a true need. And so campaigns that we ran included a mental health resource campaign where we tried to get more counseling services into schools, which proved to be very challenging, but it's still like a very important initiative. We ran a mental resource fair where we provided lots of different options for students to come and get resources about community organizations that provide mental health resources, as well as just other tactics and techniques for dealing with mental health challenges. We ran a disability awareness campaign where people were able to share their stories about experiences with disabilities, and we were able to provide some education about disabilities. And an initiative that's happened since I have left the Teen Advisory Council is a student saw that there was a need for more lunch services in schools, and so students that maybe didn't qualify for free and reduced lunch but still needed a little extra support. The Launchpad used their Moon Cafe and were able to get a bunch of lunches into schools for these students, and it expanded to schools that maybe don't offer lunch programs at all. So that was really impactful. And then one of our core campaigns that we've been working on for years and I helped to found was the Better Together campaign, which I briefly mentioned earlier. And this was really impactful. the way that that started and the way that it really became our primary objective was because we saw it as such a key need in our community. We were experiencing as students a lot of hateful and often discriminatory language from peers in our high schools. And we also, some of us experienced and were present at the Black Lives Matter protest in 2020, which turned very violent, and there were people who were aiming guns at teenagers, and that was not the community that we wanted to be in. And we saw that one of the key issues that was fueling that was our inability to communicate with each other and talk about issues that are sometimes really difficult to talk about, or politically divisive issues, and we saw that our community really needed some guidance on how to do that. So with the help of the Arizona Community Foundation, we received a grant and we created a 3-year action plan in order to pursue this campaign as our primary objective for a long time. We had a research phase, a distribution phase, and an implementation phase where we surveyed members of the community about what issues they found a challenge to talk about in Prescott and what it was hard for them to voice and discuss. We did a lot of training and research about effective communication skills, and we ended up writing a guidebook about how to effectively communicate, particularly in a heated discussion. And then we held dinners. People opted in as a family or chosen family or friend group, organization group to practice having conversations using the guidebook. So they would use the guidebook in order to choose a topic and discuss something that they maybe would have a hard time talking about. And then this past year, there have been really impactful and large-scale community-wide dinners where people sit at a table with a stranger, someone they don't know, lots of people they don't know, and have discussions and use those communication strategies as a way to better communicate with one another about issues that they may not agree on. And yeah, so there were many things that helped guide that focus. I'm really grateful to the Launchpad for teaching me about communication skills as well as what it means to be involved in local action. As Robert mentioned, I'm involved with the Ruby Prescott Council campaign, and up at school I volunteer regularly as at my local food pantry, and I feel like choosing what your primary objective is comes from your passion as well as what you really see as what is a need in the community, and taking small steps locally can have a really big ripple up in other places.
Thank you. We're going to do our group question, and I'm going to come back and start with Jane again. And the last group question is, what advice would you give to someone who wants to start up a service organization?
Well, first of all, I'd like to just say that we're very fortunate in this area to have a lot of service organizations that meet a lot of different needs. We, like Allison and Glenn, rely on volunteers to help us with service delivery, but I think it would be really important to kind of canvass the community. Like our organization, we serve the Quad Cities, so a part of Dewey, Prescott Valley, Prescott, and Chino Valley. So it would be important in trying to identify the needs that may exist that aren't currently being met, and determining one of the challenges I think most of us face is the idea of funding. Pots of money are shrinking, and there's more and more organizations all vying for the same pot of money or the same pots of people to volunteer. And so those kinds of early steps that would be very important to identify and to determine before somebody would begin to start something new.
Okay. Thank you. Pastor Kendra, same question.
I would tell someone to focus on your purpose first and make sure that you're very, very clear on why you want to start out that service organization, so that you make sure that your efforts are not split in multiple different directions, so that you're most effective, you're most fruitful with your time, your energy, your effort. You're not misusing your volunteers, you're not misusing funds that come about, but that you have a main focus and goal so that those that you help will be helped in the most effective way by your organization.
You know, the advice that I would give right out of the gate is, you know, I'm in the process of working with another 501c3 to get it open. Running into some challenges, but maybe we'll overcome them, maybe we won't. But one of the things that I found was to surround yourself with people who have or like-minded people. And for me, personally, I like to surround people who are a lot smarter than me. I really like to leverage off of my resources. It's always worked well, and I think if you're starting out the service organization, being able to leverage those resources and knowing where to go to look for them is key. I think also if you're in a leadership position, I think Kendra mentioned it earlier, and I couldn't agree with it more, is servant-based leadership. You don't lead from ahead, you lead from behind. It's, I think, the way that I look at it, and that every decision that you make is for the good of the organization and for the good of the team member that you're working with. The other thing I would say, fundraising. You know, if you can find a good grant writer, if you can find someone who has a good history of fundraising, those people, I'm sure everyone at this table can attest, are invaluable. Fundraising, clearly, to get as a startup is the hardest challenge. Like you said, there's pots of money out there, but everybody's trying to grab it. And usually the nonprofits that are up and running are the ones that are going to receive that money and not the startup. So setting yourself apart, coming up with a plan, sticking to that plan, and clearly, above all else, making sure that your passion runs deep, and that the people that you're aligning yourself with have that same passion.
I echo everything everyone said, but I'm going to get a little bit more personal. The first thing you need is a good therapist, and you need a good medication regime, because without either one of those things, you are going to be hurting. I actually thought of this question last night. I was watching the documentary of the submersible that went down to the Titanic, and unfortunately 5 people lost their lives, including the head of the company that built that submersible. They went into detail about how he always was the smartest guy in the room. He was always right. If his team disagreed with him, they were fired. He ignored red flags. And he had the only thing I think this man did well is he had a very, very strong connection to his mission. You have to have a connection to your mission. Also, look at what other service providers are in your community. If I'm very, very passionate about dogs, which I am, opening up a dog rescue, we got a ton of those. So looking at is there someone in your community that's already doing this work? Can you partner with them so that your passion and their organization can now work together? A lot of times, especially with funding that we've all said, we don't duplicate services. So that's the reason why none of us are up here, mud wrestling to get money. We all are looking at the same grants, but all of those grants are different because none of us are duplicating services. That's also really important because there are communities that I've been in where that competition actually will be what will make your organization fail, and then ultimately the people that you serve, they're the ones that suffer the most. So making sure that you're looking at what your passion is, what your mission is, and then not straying away from that mission. I can't tell you how many times the Arizona Department of Housing has said, well, I can give you $100,000 if you open this program. Well, that's not a need. I don't care how much money you're going to give me. I'm not going to just start a program because that's not a need. So really looking at those things, and then also looking within yourself. Being the leader of a nonprofit organization is not easy. I have a group of people on my management team, as well as our staff team, that are absolute lunatics for our mission, and that's why this works. They show up every single day, this is a hard job, it's very taxing on your mental health, and they show up every day the best that they can, and we all have each other's backs, and that's really what makes CCJ what it is. And that's how we get the hard work done. So again, I echo everything that everyone has said, but again, that therapist and that medication regime, whatever that looks like, prescription or not, whatever, it's really important, and I think that that's the meat and potatoes.
I would like to echo what a lot of people said about not leading from the front, because I think that many service organizations have really, really good intentions and see a need in the community and want to tackle it, but without learning from that community of interest and without being integrated into that community of interest, sometimes that holds organizations back from leading the most effectively. And I think that one of the most amazing things about the Launchpad is that rather than a bunch of adults being in a room and seeing, oh, teens need this, teens need that, and providing those resources, they actually ask teens what they need, and they hire teens and give them opportunities to lead and serve and have a voice in the organization. And I think that giving people a voice and giving the community of interest a voice in the organization is one of the most ways for it to be successful.
Thank you. Now we're going to go into our question and answer. And if you, Jim, would you collect cards? If you have a question that you have for any of the panelists, going to bring those cards up, and then I will